It was a rough weekend for Illini fans, but there might just be some good news on the horizon.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to the Monday morning edition of Locked On Illini. The date is February 24th. I know I never bring up the date, but this date is very important to me, and I'll tell you why at the end of the show. I hope you guys do stick around. I did want to say thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We hit 2,200 subs over the weekend. The fact that this show has been around less than a year, we're talking about 9-10 months, and we're already at 2,200 subs. It's just proper credit to you guys. Thank you all so much for the support. As you continue to support me, it makes me want to continue to produce content every single day, which is what I have for this channel, at least in the calendar year 2025. Today, I wanted to, first off, let's go ahead and this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Okay, so what's there to talk about? Illinois gets blasted by Duke by 43 points, the worst loss in not just Brad Underwood's career, but the worst loss in Illinois basketball history. And now Illinois is a doggone good program. It's a historic program. And so when you have your worst loss in history and you have the history of Illinois, this means something. And it's at a point where even if you did happen to catch the post-game session, you saw me and various other Illini reporters out there all talk about and kind of use the same verbiage. Is this Illinois team broken? They're certainly playing like it. It's a team that's playing with a lack of confidence, a lack of identity. They're not a good offensive team, and they're no longer a good defensive team. Their head coach seems to not know which buttons to push anymore. And so, understandably, a lot of fans are panicking, and they should be. Illinois plays Iowa on Tuesday, and I will have a preview for that matchup. But, what was considered a must-win now has become literally a must win. Because at this point, you have Michigan after that, and you also have Purdue later on in the season. You're going to have to win these games in order to, in my opinion, of course, make it to the NCAA tournament. But again, I've been talking for 3 minutes. There's enough negativity with a lot of Illini fans right now that because it's Monday and because of what this day signifies for me, again, I'll get to that a little later, I wanted to do something a little bit more positive. And that's talk about Morez Johnson Jr., a kid who was clearly my favorite player on this Illini team. I think he embodies everything that not just I like in a basketball player, but what Brad Underwood talks about when he talks about everyday guys. There's not many everyday guys on this version of the basketball team, but I truly do believe Morez is one of them. And a guy who, by the time he's done, could be all Big Ten, if not maybe one day, an all-American type of player. Well, Morez obviously went down about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with a wrist injury, and it looked like, and it was talked about, that he might be done for the year, that we had seen the last of Morez Johnson this season, and, of course, that set off the warning signs, because Morez was one of our more consistent players as of late, one of our best defensive players, and clearly our most physical player. And look, physicality is what we really could have used against a team like Duke, especially with Tommy Avicic dealing with the injuries that he's dealing with. I haven't been able to really talk about it, but, Tommy had 3 rebounds against Duke. And if you watch the game, you can see, even though he's getting healthier and as time passes, that ankle will get better, he's still not getting the jump that you would want from that ankle. And so that has to do with the fact that Illinois has been out-rebounded, I believe, 3 games in a row now. Illinois was priding itself on its rebounding advantage each and every game. So brings us back to Morez Johnson Jr. I got a chance to watch the post-game press conference that Brad did after the Duke game, and there was a lot of bad. I believe the post-game press conference lasted for 12 minutes, and I believe it was 11 minutes of stuff that would make you want to tear your hair out, poke your eyes in. But there's one thing that he just kind of subtly mentioned, and I wonder if there was a purpose behind it. And that's him talking about Morez Johnson Jr. He literally said that there's a chance that Morez might be healthy by the time of the Big Ten tournament. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm a decade short and a couple degrees short of a medical degree, but it was widely kind of assumed that Morez, again, was not going to play this year. And maybe it has to do with the technology around the healing systems in Champaign. I know they've got a top-notch strength and conditioning program over there. But the news that Morez Johnson Jr. might be back not just sooner than we expected, not just this year, but in a matter of a couple weeks is actually, in my opinion, a really, really big deal. This team right now is lacking in identity. It's lacking physicality. It's lacking size. You know what Morez will do? I think he provides all three of those. And I think Morez's return, a guy who, again, keep in mind, this whole dive kind of started in that Michigan State game, right? Illinois was up 16 points, and then at one point it was 65-64. Illinois still winning when Morez Johnson had one of the craziest plays of the Illini basketball season. Back and forth, and Morez goes up, makes a two-handed swat, comes down, unfortunately lands on his wrist. I don't think he scores a basket after that game, and if anything, he missed a couple really easy ones. And at that point in the post-game session, I said, hey, you counted too much on Morez, and the offense was running through him because Michigan State had nobody to guard him. He's too physical for them. He was overpowering them, but he's a young kid, and he got tired. Turns out he did not get tired. He was hurt so much that his wrist was broken, but Morez was still willing to go out there, adrenaline pumping, and wanted to help the team win the game. That matters. We're talking about a group of players who are looking for a leader, looking for a guy to just kind of look at and be like, hey, he's fighting, I'm going to fight. Maybe Morez's return after a broken wrist and him working his butt off to get conditioned, to get ready, to get back on that basketball court for his teammates could be the jump start that the team needs mentally to get things going again. Look, physically, for the most part, this team is healthy now, right? At least we haven't heard, and okay, I get this at this point, I should be knocking on wood somewhere. There's no more sickness going around with this team. Tommy's ankle, again, clearly not healthy, but it's going to get better by the day. Or at least we know it's not going to get worse, or at least that's what we've been told. So now, with that talent back on the court together, it's a simple matter of it being mental. As silly as this sounds, and laugh it off if you want, this team is still very talented. The individuals on the basketball team are a very talented individual team, but they're not producing. At least they haven't for almost a month and a half now. Are they still capable of it? Yes, but it's going to be very tricky, and this is why Brad Underwood makes a lot of money. Do I have confidence in Brad this year? He hasn't shown too much, but I truly do think that the return of a guy like Morez Johnson right before the Big Ten tournament, again, keep in mind, I've said that with one win, I'm going to be a little nervous about making the NCAA tournament, but with two wins, meaning let's just say they do end up beating Iowa on Tuesday and then get one win in that Big Ten tournament, at least I can sit back and kind of rest easy that, okay, the seed is not going to be as high as I would have liked 2 months ago, but you're in the tournament. And quite honestly, that needs to be the goal. Make it to the tournament. Sure, the ultimate goal has to be at least the second weekend, but sometimes you just have to readjust your expectations as the season goes along. And right now, with the way this team is playing, heck, I would just settle for making the tournament. And I think, again, a guy like Morez Johnson coming back can kind of uplift the mood and morale in that locker room. Brad can point to a guy who is a warrior and say, hey, look, Morez came back for you guys, came back for this team. By then, Ivisic, hopefully, his ankle is going to be considerably more healthy. And then you once again have at Ivisic and Morez 4 and 5 spot in the lineup. And that spot, those two guys are going to cause havoc on a lot of Big Ten teams. Again, the team has flaws, certainly has flaws, and I'm not trying to gloss over them. But in order for a basketball team to win, you always want your best players to play. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with me when I say Morez Johnson is one of their best players. And so we'll see. It's one of those things where, did Brad say this just because he wanted to throw out a little distraction to the media? He knows the media's on him. He knows this was the worst loss that Illinois has ever had. And maybe it was him trying to sprinkle a little positivity in that post-game press conference to say, hey, things are bad, but, they could be turning around very soon. I mean, Brad is a manipulator when it comes to the post-game press conferences, right? He's in the past, he's attacked his players. He attacks referees. It seems like he is always playing those mind games. So I don't know what the purpose of saying Morez could be back by the Big Ten tournament was. If he's lying and there's no chance of it happening, it wouldn't be the first time Brad Underwood has lied to us. But if there's a chance that Morez might come back for that Big Ten tournament, quite honestly, it's not that I'm positive about the season outlook from here on out. But again, this was a Michigan State team that Illinois was still leading, and then all of a sudden went on a 15-0 run. Michigan State did, and Illinois, just the wheels fell off. As soon as Morez got hurt, then he was taken out. Had that not happened, who knows? I think if Morez Johnson is on this team is a much better team, and a team that, now that they're sick, they're not sick. Now that they're, for the most part, getting healthy, I still think silly me can have a pretty high ceiling. March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you can pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. Fast payouts. When I win, my money hits my account in as little as 15 minutes. No waiting around, and it's quick and easy. I love how I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So sometime on Sunday, Jason Ron, a member of the Locked On Illini Discord, dropped a graphic showing that Illinois was projected by Vegas to win 7.5 football games next season. Now, first off, I mentioned the Locked On Illini Discord. If you haven't joined, we're getting so close to 100 members in that group now. Again, it's Illinois fans just like yourself, just like myself, spread all across the country. We kind of have a central way location of all just communicating back and forth. Look, it was sad on Saturday. Not going to lie. A lot of us were venting. A lot of us were frustrated. It happens. But sometimes it's just nice to have a community of other Illini fans to talk to and to vent about, because your Uncle Bill, who has no interest in Illinois, honestly doesn't care about your crying. But so definitely make sure you join the link. Should be in the description if I'm doing my job correctly. Join us on the Discord. But again, that's the type of information that you get from the Discord. So Jason said 7.5. And again, I know this was supposed to be a positive episode, but this one kind of ticked me off. 7.5. What are we missing that Vegas sees that this team is only supposed to win about 7.5, whether it's 7 or 8 games? The reason it bothers me is because 2 years ago, not last season, but 2 seasons ago, I believe Illinois' over-under was 5.5. And that was coming off an 8-win season. And for me, I thought 5.5, or maybe it was 6.5, regardless, it's not important for where I'm going with this, was insanely low. Was ridiculously low. And at the time, I was on my other show, the Illini Cast, which, by the way, subscribe to that on YouTube as well. More long-form version of what I do here. Every time I was invited to a preview of another channel, of another host, whether it's college football, whatever it might be, I went and just embarrassed myself by telling everybody, you got to hammer the over. Brett Bielema has this thing going. There's no way we don't make a bowl game after We just won 8 games the year prior. At one point, we were 7-1. There's no way that we're only going to win 5 games this year. Are you kidding me? Illinois ended up winning 5 games that year. And, clearly one of the most disappointing seasons that I've ever had to witness as a football fan. And that takes something because, again, I am a big-time Illinois football fan as well. So I've seen a lot of misery and I've seen a lot of disappointment in my time. So for me, that just lingered. That's always lingered. That's something. That's why I've always paid attention to what the over-unders for that come out with Vegas. Because truthfully, I trust Vegas more than I trust, the analytics, or the projections and, the Torvix and this and that. No, for me, Vegas seems to have the pulse of what's going on more than anyone else. And so 7.5, honestly, look, this is funny. Here I am sitting about Illinois having a 7.5 point over under and saying that I'm disappointed. How many years past would we be disappointed if Illinois had the 7.5 over under coming into the year? Silly of me, right? But still, I've seen this team. A lot of this team is coming back. 18 starters from that bowl game, 16 overall from last year's football team. A team that won 10 games are going to be coming back next year. It looks like we've plugged some of the holes on the defensive side. Our recruiting continues to get better and better. And oh, by the way, we have a senior quarterback, which is kind of a hack when it comes to dealing with college football nowadays. Having a senior quarterback is an advantage, a big advantage. And Illinois has that. And yet, 7.5. I don't know where the losses necessarily are coming from. Maybe you're talking about, going to Bloomington against Indiana is going to be tough. And I know that's going to be a tough game, but I wish Illinois played Indiana last year. I'm just going to be honest about that. I would have loved to see what the final result of that game would be. And not that I'm doubting that Curt Cignetti is a fantastic coach. Obviously, I can Google it, right? That's his famous catchphrase. But he's revamping a lot of those skill players, a lot of that roster. And you know what? We have Indiana early in the seasons where that team still has to gel a little bit. Maybe Vegas has us losing to a USC team that maybe, when it comes to 4 and 5 star talents might be better. But does anyone really understand what's going on out there on the West Coast with Lincoln Riley? I mean, if his buyout wasn't so incredibly high, his seat would be scorching hot right now. But it's just his agent has saved his job for at least another year or two before USC may just have no choice but to let him go. Again, I'm just puzzled. You let me know what you guys think. Is 7.5 way too low? I thought if the number would have come out at 8.5, I'm like, that's perfect. Because even though I think they can repeat what they did last year, win 10 games, maybe even 11 games, 8.5 is probably the right number. You don't want to get too far ahead, especially when you're a fan of this particular program. But you let me know what you think. 7.5, obviously that number is going to go up. That number could go down. Let me know. Are you going to put any money down on it? This is not a gambling show, so I'm not going to give you any advice one way or the other. I just want to hear you guys' opinion. 7.5 is the number that came out over the weekend. Let me know what you think. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off and want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And welcome back. Full disclosure, this might be kind of an awkward segment for some of you guys. And so if you want to skip it, feel free to do so. I get a little personal in this one. So I just want to give you guys a little heads up. News came out over the weekend, unfortunately, that Andre Curbelo was dismissed from yet another basketball school. And it looks like that his career is essentially at this point, at least his college basketball career is now over. Andre came into Illinois and is going to be one of the more unforgettable players of recent memory. He won 2 Big Ten championships. He was, I forget if it was freshman of the year or sixth man of the year here. He won awards, he won accolades, and he's a kid who, 1 minute would make a completely errant, what are you even thinking about pass? And the very next minute, he made a pass that maybe only 50 humans on this entire earth can make. Very much an up and down basketball player, but one who's had such positive energy and, someone who you couldn't take your eyes off of every time he was on the basketball court. And, once the news came out about Andre essentially being let go from his college basketball team, there's very vocal, what I hope, minority out there talking about how Andre pissed away his career. And, just sometimes you have to look in the mirror, and a whole bunch of quotes of that ilk coming out. And so I just wanted to take a moment to kind of address it. I'm not going to be saying anything along those lines. Allegedly, and I'm using that word very carefully, while Andre was in Champaign, he suffered a concussion. We know he suffered a concussion. He missed a couple of games early in his second season because of it. And reportedly, he just was never quite the same after that, whether that's being on the basketball court or just as much just personality-wise. And for that, I feel like I understand more than a lot of people who watch Andre Curbelo's career may have. And let me try to tell you why. I said earlier, February 24th is a very special day for me. We're celebrating 2,200 subs over this weekend, 224. And now, I can say some of you already know this story. This marks exactly 2 years ago on February 24th, 2023, when I was putting my then sleeping 2-year-old son into his car seat. I was buckling him up when on an icy road, another car kind of smashed into me, rendering me not knowing what's going on. I was on the ground. I had 13 staples on the top of my head, 26 stitches all over my body, fractured lumbar spine, lower spine. My right knee was sprained, and I had an extremely severe concussion, a concussion that I suffered to this date, and quite honestly might be for the rest of my life. So I bring this up because you guys will note, especially my everydayers, you'll note for about a month or so, I always give the shout out, like, hey, please message me on all your favorite social media. Find me on Locked On Illini. Send me a message. Say something hello. Say something nice, or say something not so nice, but just keep it constructive. And the reason I say that is because I'm not for everybody, and I get messages saying, hey, you say and too much. You stutter your way through. You sound like you're having a stroke when you talk. It's people just intentionally being mean, right? It's just people who have a cartoon avatar as their icon or whatever you call it, and they're faceless, so they're just angry or miserable with their jobs, and for whatever reason they decided to send me those kind of messages. And I always respond in kind, because I'm not going to return that negative energy with my own negative energy. Guys, I know there's way smoother hosts out there. I know there's guys who talk a lot more fluently than I do right now. But all I can say is I know that hasn't always been the case. I never had these I don't even know what you call them, speech impediments that I currently have. It's simply my brain and my mouth talk in different speeds at this moment. So sometimes, things do come out awkwardly. But you know what? I could be gone right now. I could be unalived at this point, because a lot of other people would have been. If you seen what I looked like that night, if I showed you pictures of what I looked like that night, if you saw what my car looked like that night, and you could imagine me sitting there putting my son in the car seat, and that's the after effect on the car, you can only imagine how I look like that night. And yet here I am, 2 years later, being paid to cover a team I love, doing essentially what I'm very passionate about. And it's one of those where I wouldn't change anything for the world. Do I wish that incident didn't happen? Absolutely. But for 3-4 months after that accident, I could barely put sentences together. I barely put a couple words together. And so it was actually even after meeting with a concussion doctor, one of the top doctors in the entire country when it comes to dealing with concussions, it was her who told me, "Hey, Sonny, you've got to just go out and start talking to people, even though you're insecure about it. I know you're your worst enemy, and that hasn't changed to this day now. Like I know some of these episodes have awkward transitions and the uhs and or whatever. I try to edit them out sometimes, but I've done that less and less because I've become more comfortable in my skin. But it's that discussion with the concussion doctor, which made me start Illini Cast again, my other show on YouTube, where I would do long form Illini content. It really did help to the point where I got this opportunity with Locked On Network, and again, everything ultimately worked out. And just to circle back, I guess my whole point with this Curbelo situation was, I know I'd been looking. I'm not saying looking forward to. I'm not even going to say dreading, but February 24th is circled on my calendar every single year. My wife mentioned the same thing. She knows that my personality goes off a little bit as the day comes up, just because I start thinking about everything that has happened since, and what could have happened, and how I could, in an alternate universe, not be here at this point. And so that's why when the Andre Curbelo news dropped over the weekend, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, taking digs at Andre, who quite honestly don't know what happened. And I'm not even saying what has happened with him, like he's had a personality change or he's had anything change due to that concussion. Maybe it has nothing to do with it. But for me, having gone through what I have, just the fact that there's a chance that maybe that concussion did have something to do with it. Look, when a brain smashes against the side of your skull, nobody can control what happens beyond that. And with Andre's case, it's the same thing. So I know if there's any chance that Andre Curbelo ever comes around and starts watching this particular segment, hold your head up, dude. Like even if it didn't work out at the college basketball level, I don't know what your future aspirations are. Maybe you can play professionally somewhere overseas. I'll be rooting for you. You're fun to root for as an Illini. You're always going to be memorable, in my opinion. And not that I've grown to become anything special in any industry, but at the very least, I'm an example of success. And maybe that success is only in my own head. Of again, just overcoming whatever this massive concussion, which again, I might have to deal with for the rest of my life, but it's fine. I'm grateful for it because I get to go home to my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old every day. I apologize if I got a little weird in that last segment, but again, this whole day is kind of weird for me. I don't know if I'll probably be off social media all of the 24th. I hope you guys all understand, but I will have a brand new episode on Tuesday. We're going to preview Iowa and talk about this must-win game, because it's an absolutely must-win game now at this point. Iowa at home, you're going to be favored, but there's going to be a lot of nervous energy, whether that's from the crowd, the basketball players on the court, even your head coach. Can Illinois pull it off? We're going to certainly need to. On your way out, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Just know, especially on this day, I sincerely do mean it when I say I appreciate each and every one of you. ILL, love you guys.